All right, rocking and rolling on another episode of Buffalo Roamer Outdoors, and I'm pleased to be joined by Dan Faust, former Illinoisan, a fellow, I should say, and a through paddler as well. So I'm really excited to chat with you. How you doing, Dan?
Doing good.
That's good. I'm excited to hear about your river trips and a lot to talk about. So I guess if you want to start, give me a little rundown of who you are and your story with the outdoors, and then just like a little resume of your paddling and outdoor adventures.
Yeah, I'm just a average recreational paddler. I started paddling in 1969. I joined the Boy Scouts, and they had a 100-mile canoe trip on the Spoon River. Uh, and I'm not sure where we started, but I do know we ended up uh, very near the Illinois River, down by Havana, Illinois. Uh, and Uh, I've just been hooked on canoeing ever since. I eventually started kayaking as well. Um, there's something special about rivers. They're dynamic. They're always changing, and I love rivers. Lakes are fun, but my thing is really kayaking on rivers, and so I've been doing it ever since. My wife and I got married in 1981. And a few years later, we bought our first canoe. She was in Girl Scouts, I was in Boy Scouts. We both like to paddle and camp and all that. So, uh, bought our first canoe, and that was a lot of fun. But my wife got a job where she was working a lot of weekends and stuff, and I started paddling by myself in that, tandem canoe, Grumman canoe. And I get out and I get on a windy day, and there was a few times I couldn't even paddle downstream. The wind was so fierce coming upstream. It's ridiculous. So I decided I needed something smaller and more maneuverable. And I found an old fiberglass kayak for sale. I think it was like $50, something really cheap. So I picked that up, and like a big old plastic paddle must have weighed 5 pounds, and that's how I started out. Um, Not long after that, I decided I really needed to find a paddling club, and I searched around, and I finally found the Mackinac Canoe Club. And I had quite a bit of paddling experience before that. Boy Scouts taught me a lot, but I hadn't had much formal training since the Boy Scouts. And when I got into the Mackinac Canoe Club, I really started getting an education and how to paddle and canoe camping, and kind of some of the tips and tricks and ways to do things right, be a little more efficient or a little safer, things like that. So they're a great club, um, and I probably paddled with them for 15 or 20 years, and we would go year round. We never had an off season. I had a dry suit, and you know how it is. You never have enough boats. You always need one more. Um, so just started paddling all the time, collecting equipment and doing more stuff. Dabbled in whitewater for a while. I was never very good at whitewater, but I wanted to paddle on the Vermilion River over here at Wildcat, and I did that a few times. That was fun. But that's class two, class three, not a big deal.
Sure.
That's about the limit of my whitewater skills and experience.
And how and when? And also, I don't know if you're maybe clicking a pen or something, but I'm picking it up on the mic.
Sorry.
No problem. How did you transition from, the not shorter trips, but weekend trips, maybe longer trips? And where did the Mississippi start to come into play? And what's your Mississippi and Big River history?
Well, the vast majority of my experience, just my own paddling and then paddling with the canoe club and, friends and this and that, almost exclusively on small rivers and streams. Um, the Vermilion here in Pontiac's not very big, maybe, 75, 50 to 75 feet across for most of the time. And it's not necessarily a super deep river. Um, so that's what I mostly did. And it was a lot of fun. They had a group of guys that kind of like to go on little sections and little streams where nobody else usually went. Had a couple guys had the Illinois Gazetteer, and they would like to mark off all the little blue lines that they had paddled, and they're really kind of, I think a couple of them had a goal of marking off every one of those blue lines in Illinois. That's a lot of rivers and streams, but a
It's a
lot of
lot.
those are, they've got deadfalls and log jams and maybe a few beaver dams here and there. And at first, I thought, this is crazy, man. This is, who wants to paddle out here? But then it kind of got to be fun, and we got pretty good at it. And so I really didn't. I never went over to the Illinois. I never paddled that. Never had any uh, really inclination to paddle on the Missouri or the Mississippi or anything like that. And my wife and I heard about Canoeocopia up in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Every March, the big deal up there. And we were up there, oh, must have been mid to late 80s. And one of the first years I think we went up there, and they had all these presentations. I was up there, I thought it was just going to be a shopping trip. And then I found out, wow, when you pay a fee to get in, then you have access to all these people who do incredible trips, and you can sit and listen to them, and they'll show you a nice little slideshow or a movie, and talk about the trips they've done. So there was a guy there named Byron Curtis. He's from Wisconsin. He was a school teacher and a recreational paddler, and he just decided one summer while he was off, he would paddle the Mississippi from his hometown right there, St. Croix River, and just take it from there and go all the way to the Gulf. And he wrote a little book called Bluffs to Bayous. He gave a great presentation, as you can imagine a school teacher would, very comfortable and making a presentation and speaking in front of people. Super nice guy. And that kind of planted the seed. And I got the book, I read it, and it was always in the back of my mind, someday I want to do that. And then one thing led to another, and I got retired, and I decided that's what I'm going to do.
That's great. And so it's interesting. I did the river in so much that you've said already. I want to like dive back into, but I want to hear more about your trips. We'll circle back, but I got some stories about the Vermilion River and paddling lakes and or not lakes, but all the streams and rivers in Illinois here as well. But I paddled the river in 2017. I did a source to sea on the Mississippi, or 2016, and you don't talk to people who've done it twice very often. And
Hmm.
so that's an interesting perspective of doing two trips, because you did a source to sea in 2021 and then the 2022 trip with Dale Sanders as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, you know, I I've had kind of a blessed life. It just seems like so many things just fall in my lap like this, and so I started preparing about 18 months in advance for my 2021 trip. It was really supposed to be a 2020 trip. And then COVID came along and I got kind of freaked out and I said, I'm just going to postpone a year. There was so many variables and so many unknowns. And, They started out saying, maybe this will be over by summer and all that stuff. And then it became apparent that that wasn't going to happen. And so anyway, I just decided that if there was any chance whatsoever that my trip might cause someone else to become ill or even die, then I just didn't want any part of that. I was just going to wait and see what happened. And sure enough, the next year, things had kind of settled out a little bit. We kind of knew what we were dealing with, and I was a little more sure about what was going on. And that that trip, that first trip I did up by myself, it just blew me away. You expect things to go wrong. You expect there to be problems and difficulties and hardships and what. So, one thing and another, and it just, there was very little hardships or very little difficulties. Um, I mentioned I paddled all those little rivers and streams and creeks and stuff, and that was kind of just what we did for years and years and years. And I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. When you get up in the headwaters, Lake Itasca, from there to Bemidji is about 50-55 miles. And for a lot of people, that's the toughest part of the whole trip. It is difficult. It's small, and there's just a lot of challenges. There's beaver dams and deadfalls and log jams and strainers and a lot of twists and turns. And you'll come to a place and it gets real marshy, and the river widens out. It's kind of a pond type of a situation. Later in the summer, that gets all overgrown, and you just can't tell where the water's going. And I had just no problems with any of that stuff because I've dealt with all that for so many years. I didn't know it, but it was kind of like I was training for that trip the whole
Sure.
time for years and years. And then, there's the bugs and everything. And I don't know what it was that year, and I'm a guy that I wear long pants all the time. I don't wear shorts. I never do. Not since I was a kid. And as I've gotten older, I've realized I need to protect myself from the sun. So I was like long sleeve sun shirt with a hood, a wide brimmed hat, gloves, the whole works. I didn't have much exposed skin, but I would get into camp in a lot of places. Now, there were places up in Minnesota where there were mosquitoes and what have you, especially when you got up into camp away from the river. But it wasn't bad until, it'd get about dusk when the mosquitoes always come out. And I'd
And
duck into my hammock and, with the bug net, and I was fine. And I
and what
got
time
down
what time of year did you do the two trips, and how long were each of them?
the first trip solo. I started on May 29th, and it took me 64 days. In 2022 with Dale, we started on June the 14th because that's Dale's birthday, and we took 87 days. I think it was about the 8th of September we finished.
Okay, so I want to dive into both of these trips as we already are, but set up your second trip with Dale because I know because I followed along. But uh, who is he? What was the goal? And obviously, there's a film about that trip that's out now.
Yep. Well, for those of you who don't know, Dale Sanders goes by the trail name of Greybeard. And in 2015, I believe, 2015, Dale decided, after living a long life, he was already 80 years old. He decided he wanted to start doing some adventure trips. And so he paddled the entire Mississippi River. Him and his good friend, Richard Sojourner, did the whole river together.
And I should
And he
interject
said,
quickly as well that Dale was on this podcast, I think about 2 years ago. We had him on, I forget what episode it was, but if you're listening and interested, go back and check it out because that's a great one. It was well before the trip with you. I think it was
yeah,
relatively soon after his first Mississippi River trip. But all right, keep her going.
yeah. And Dale's a super interesting guy. So he did that and he set the age record at 80 years old. Um, and I don't know who had the record before that. Maybe Verlin Kruger or somebody like that, but it really wasn't. Anywhere near 80 years old. No one else had done anything like that. And in the meantime, Dale, after that, I think the next year he did the Grand Canyon, did rim to rim to rim, and he still holds that record.
That's a
It's
brutal
still,
one.
yeah, but he said it was pretty easy. I did a rim to rim a year or two before my Mississippi River trip, and like Dale, I just trained the heck off myself for that. I lost about 50 pounds getting ready for that, so
Wow.
it wasn't that bad. Of course, I took 4 days, and it's only 23 miles. He did his in about 6 or 7 days, and he did rim to rim to rim. So he did twice what I did, and he said it was a piece of cake. That was the easiest record he's got. So it's
Uh,
kind of surprising, but if you prepare properly, and Dale is like an expert backpacker, as you can imagine. The next year after the rim to rim to rim, he did the Appalachian Trail, and he set the age record on the Appalachian Trail. And so uh, for 3 years, Dale held both records, both age records simultaneously. Never been done before, and there's no one else will even have an opportunity to do that unless they're, you know, somebody like Dale, just a phenomenon, a freak of nature. But it's pretty impressive. So then I started doing my research for my 2020 trip, and of course, I found out about Dale. And I was just blown away. And of course, instantly, I'm a fan of Dale Sanders and started looking up everything I could find on him and reading about it. And I found out that Dale has a wall in his house, the wall going down to his basement. And that stairway is kind of a long, winding stairway. People came through and Dale's a river angel as well in Memphis. And they'd stay with Dale and they would sign the wall.
as they're
And
paddling through on their Mississippi River trip.
yeah, make a record of their trip down the river. And I think it started out as a record of the people that stayed with Dale, and he's got every name you can imagine that's done the Mississippi River. Is your name on there, Will?
It's not on there. No, I
You
missed him
need
when
to
I
get
went through. Yeah, it's a shame.
right. Yeah, it was pretty early, so I don't even know if the wall was going yet when you went through, but. So, of course, that was a goal right off the bat. Man, I want to get my name on that wall. I mean, I don't really feel like my name belongs up there with some of those legendary names, but I thought, hey, if he'll let me sign it, what the heck, that'd be something to really brag about. So I did that. I contacted Dale, and he arranged to have me picked up and brought to his house, and
On
I
your trip,
signed the wall.
you're stopping Memphis. I would guess, just judging, probably day what? Probably like 40 or 50 or something along those lines. Maybe earlier.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah, right in there, late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah. The trip actually goes pretty quick after that. The river's free flowing, at least for me, and I was moving along pretty good that year. But Dale, so then you sign it, and he said, well, don't put your ending date on there because we don't know it yet. And he said, when you come back through going home, of course, I'm coming back up to Illinois. It worked out good for me and going right by there. He said, just stop in again and finish it off, and we'll get to visit some more. And he said, I lost my Mississippi River age record last year. Now I can't say the name of the man that took it from him. Super guy. Him
Was
and
it
Dale are friends.
it's not Stan something, is it?
Yeah, Stan Stark. Thank you.
Stark?
Yeah, Stan
Yeah.
Stark.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Stan's passed away now, but Stan was just a great guy too. I got to message back and forth with him on Facebook and stuff, and I always wanted to meet him. I thought I'd have plenty of time to do that someday, and unfortunately, Stan suddenly passed away. But Dale was saying, Stan took my record, and I'm going to get it back next year. I say, wow, okay. He goes, yeah, I'm trying to put together a bunch of river angels and people to, support me and help me out. And he said, I'm really trying to get a hold of my right hand man, Matt Briggs, but he's out on the Continental Divide Trail and didn't have cell service. And he was like weeks at a time. You couldn't even call him. And so I said, well, if you're looking, kind of almost jokingly, I said, if you're looking for paddlers, I'll paddle with you. And we both kind of laughed about it. And then on the way back through, going home, stopped in with my wife and my daughter, and everybody got to meet Dale again, and kind of reinforced it. I said, "Hey, did you get a hold of Matt?" And he said, "Yeah, I got a hold of Matt, but we were probably going to add one or two more paddlers." And I said, "Well, I'm ready
You're
to go.
you're
If
fresh off a trip, feeling great after just finishing it and
yeah,
just high on life, I have to assume.
yeah." Well, and I am kind of a little bit obsessed with paddling. I had told my family that my dream would be to paddle the river twice in 1 year. I don't think anyone's ever done that. And so I told them before the trip even started, my very first trip, I said, if the conditions are right, when I finish, I want to go right back up to Bemidji or right up back up to Lake Itasca and do it again. And I was serious. I would have done that,
You're an
but
animal.
it was a low water year, and it was, nobody was being able to make that first 50 miles, and I didn't want to do it if I couldn't do the whole thing. I didn't want to have to start at Bemidji or portage around a bunch of stuff, so it didn't work out. But that was just all the more fuel that, start bugging Dale, let him get him to let me go with him, and eventually he did. We had miscommunications and misunderstandings. He wasn't sure I was serious about going back out the next year, uh, but absolutely I was. And I just thought, what have I got to lose? I didn't think he would. He'd want me to go with him, but in a way too, I told him just recently. We were talking about it. Um, I I I told my wife, I said, it's a free world. I'll just show up. I know when he's leaving, you know? And it's like, hey, you know,
Hey,
I
we
might not
happen to
be,
be doing the trip at the same time.
yeah,
Imagine
what
that.
a coincidence. I might not be officially part of your team, but yeah,
Uh,
I'm just here. I can at least witness history.
that's funny.
But yeah, he let me become part of the team. And I mean, it just blows
And
my
so
mind that,
break down the team if you can for me and exactly the production because that's quite the opposite I would have to imagine in some aspects of doing the trip solo your first time and then with Dale a larger crew also shooting a movie. I'd be interested to hear about all
yeah,
that.
yeah, we had kind of an entourage there for a while. So yeah, I mean, people ask me about that. How do the two trips compare? And I say it might as well have been on two different rivers because they were completely different trips, completely different experiences, and honestly, two absolutely fantastic experiences. I'm so lucky. I couldn't ask for anything better. And after my first trip, it went so amazingly well that it was almost sad because I knew I wanted to do the river again someday. Uh, just even on my own, even if it hadn't been for Dale, and there would be no way a trip would probably ever live up to that first trip. It was just so perfect. There's no way that could happen twice. And then going with Dale, I mean, he said there's going to be a film crew, and he kind of told us who it was going to be and everything. Of course, I'd never met him. Well, I had met Zach Rivers just briefly at Canoeing that spring before the trip, but I didn't know any of these people. I didn't really even know Dale. I heard of Matt Briggs and messaged back and forth with him a little bit, but I didn't know any of these folks. So, and people ask me, was it what you expected? And I said, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have any expectations whatsoever. And I had no understanding of what it was like to make a movie, what would go into that. I didn't understand my role in the whole thing. As
And
a matter of
what was your role? What did it come to be?
well, as far as the movie goes, it just you have to have some supporting cast, and they're looking for stories or anecdotes or input or things to help tell the story. And it was interesting because as time went on, we knew what they were filming. At first, Matt and I would just try to stay out of the way, not be in the shot. Didn't want to ruin anything. We didn't want to photobomb anybody. But then they would come to us and say, "Oh, we need to do an interview." Interview? What are you talking about? Yeah, we're gonna set you down here in a chair, put a camera on you. We're gonna start asking you questions. Okay. No idea what the questions were going to be, um, and I was super nervous. And so we see what they're doing eventually, and we're kind of like, what? I wonder what they're going to do with that. And we really didn't have a good clue. We thought it was going to be just a documentary about this record-setting trip, and that would have been okay. But actually, the movie is just more of the trip is a backdrop to tell the story of Dale's life and some of the things that he's accomplished, and really how he hopes to inspire people with his story. And it is very inspiring. It's
Amazing. I can't
unreal.
wait to see it, and I'm ashamed to say I haven't seen it yet. I know it's been out for a while, and what's it called? It's called Greybeard, Myth, the Man, the Legend. And where can people see it, or can they?
I believe it's on Amazon Prime right now. And of course, you can go to the website, uh, Greybeard, the man, the myth, the Mississippi .com. Just do a search for Greybeard, the man, the myth, the Mississippi, and it'll come up. And you can buy a copy. You can get it on a DVD, or you can do digital streaming.
And so, what I kind of interjected there, but what how did it come together, and what was your how did you see it come together with being a part of it, but not understanding the production actually of the film? Because obviously that's not obviously, but that's a whole separate thing than just doing the trip, is trying to create this story and product that kind of lives beyond the trip, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they shoot hundreds and hundreds of hours of I don't know, film. I don't know if it's not really film, but it's all digital footage, or it's not footage anymore either. I don't know what you call it, but they shoot a lot of scenes, a lot of stuff. They record a lot of what we're doing, and all these interviews. It seems like every time they show up, then we do a whole series of interviews after we got done paddling that day, and so our first glimpse of it was at the very end, and they worked. I mean, it was funny. Dale had this plan to do the trip in 87 days because he was 87 years old. So he was 87 years and 87 days old when we finished the trip
And
in the Gulf of Mexico.
to put it in a bit of context as well, I was what was I? How old was I here? 20, maybe 23, 24, something like that. 23, and I did it in 103 days.
Yeah. And that's cool. Every trip's different, and
But
take your
I'm just
time.
saying, yeah, to put it in context,
Yeah,
87 to 80 days, or 87 to 87 years old is just
yeah,
insane.
it
Yeah.
is. I mean, I was there, and I still can't hardly believe it. I got to pinch myself. He did incredibly well. He had some. We all struggled at times, but he's a trooper. I mean, it's just like the Energizer Bunny; he just keeps on going. But so in order to finish at 87 days, we actually got to Venice, Louisiana, 3 days early, and that was kind of the plan too. Dale wanted to take a break. He loves that area, and he just wanted to hang out for 3 days. And I forgot what I was going to tell you now.
It's all right. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah, but
um,
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
and how,
Yeah, yeah, I know what I was going to tell you.
okay, hit me.
Those for those 3 days, the camera crew, the film crew, whatever, they worked almost nonstop, putting together the trailer for the movie. We didn't even know what the title of the movie was going to be. So after Dale completed the trip and we finished noonish on that 87th day, went back to the little bed and breakfast or hotel we were staying at, and they had a big party. Um, Lots of food and music, live music, and all kinds of stuff going on. And the culmination of the whole thing was a preview, a debut of the name and the movie trailer. And that's when we got our first glimpse at what it was going to be. And then, so that's in September.
And that's when you kind of understood the, I guess, professional quality of it, right? Or
Oh,
what?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Totally blew me away. These folks are really professionals. Um, you know, uh, they're young and they're starting out small. They don't have, a huge bunch of money behind them and a big production crew and all that. This is bare bones shoestring budget, and had to raise funds along the way so they could keep filming and recording. But yeah, top notch. I mean,
that's awesome. I can't wait to see it.
yeah. And then we didn't really see them any more of it. We didn't really know fully understand what exactly the movie was going to be until January the next year. And the movie debuted at the Lookout Wild Film Festival in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we were all there for that. Man, just blew me away.
Hmm. And how, what are the differences, or how did you find the differences between just being solo and being in the group?
Well, that's an interesting thing, too. My first trip, I
And also,
kind of,
what were you paddling?
both trips for me, I paddled a Wilderness Systems Tsunami 145, which is kind of a short boat as far as sea kayaks by most people's standards. The the 14 and a half foot boat worked really, really well up in the headwaters because it's so small and twisty and turny. And that particular boat will just haul a ton of gear. It's got a lot of volume inside. So that worked out great. It's a great boat. It tracks well, easy to handle, it's stable, got got decent speed, decent efficiency, um, and I paddled it both years. About halfway through the trip with Dale, my second trip with that boat, I said, if I do this again, I'm going to have a longer boat though,
Something a
because
little
I just got,
sleeker.
yeah, I definitely kind of got tired of that, you know, big open water in that smallish boat, but it did it. Dale and Matt each had a Northwind solo, which is about a 15 or 16-foot solo canoe, open canoe. And those boats handled phenomenally. I was really surprised how dry they were, for one thing, some of the big water we were in. And yeah, those are really good boats.
That's great. And how about the difference, or yeah, between doing a trip that long in a group and doing it solo?
Well, I wanted to go solo the first year when I was by myself. I had people ask if they could go with me. I had people offer to join and help, kind of lead me through it. And I really wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to prove to myself that I really could do it by myself. and but it didn't exactly turn out the way I thought it would. I had so much support, ground support from my family and from river angels and stuff like that. I look back through my blog, and it averaged out to about once every 5 days. I was either in a hotel with my family or I was at a river angel. So yeah, I did the trip solo, but it wasn't really all that difficult when you're only out there on an average of 5 days at a time.
It's
Um,
amazing, the people who pop up along the way who you meet, isn't it? That's
yeah,
always my biggest takeaway when people ask is,
yeah,
you
and
go in thinking, yeah,
I think I benefited from the long preparation time because it was about 2.5 years before, from the time I started to the time I actually did the trip, with the COVID delay in there for a year. So I was on the Facebook Mississippi River Paddlers page and the Mississippi River Angels page quite a bit. And people knew my name, and I had my picture out there. They knew what I looked like. I'd done a few videos so they could look at those and really kind of see and hear what I was like. And I had river angels just coming out of the woodwork, make an offering to put me up for the night and feed me, and just do all the wonderful things they do for you, do my laundry and let me have their shower and all that. And I could only take advantage of just a fraction of the people that offered to help me out.
wow,
And that was another great thing about going with Dale. The very next year, I got to meet a lot of the River Angels and a lot of the folks that I had to kind of skip over, and I didn't get to meet the first year. So that was a lot of fun in of itself, and it was very rewarding to know that, and it gave me a lot of confidence in my paddling and my outdoor skills to know that I did do what I did on my own. Um, but I have to say, as rewarding and as fantastic as that first trip was, going with a group was, in my mind, a bigger accomplishment and much more satisfying, much more rewarding. Uh, and you're all pulling together for a common cause. And for us, it was really a specific thing. We were out there just to help Dale, to try to do anything we could to get him down the river. And you can't push him or pull him or help him along. He has to do it himself. But you can be there and encouraging him. And when he gets off the river, anything he needs, get him some food or whatever we can to help him. We can do that, and we did. And so everybody, definitely, that was our whole focus. And when everybody's pulling for the one goal like that, it's a really rewarding situation. And we really came close together, that group. And I that was the thing I hated the most, getting off the river. I knew I wasn't going to see them guys anymore.
right. Yeah, that's amazing, and yeah, you get to know somebody. I always tell people, you really get to know somebody on a camping trip. Whether it's a weekend or 4 days, 5 days, or 87 days. There's no hiding out there when you're with somebody 24/7 and elements are out, things are going wrong. You can hide a little bit in normal life, when you're comfortable and you can fake it for a bit. But man, out in the woods, it's tough to fake it for too long. You really get to know people well, don't you?
Yes, you do. And you see each other at some of your highs and lows. Maybe not necessarily see the worst in a person or at their worst, but everybody, you're not always at your best, and the trip wears on you after a while. It's hot or it's cold and buggy, and it's sun beating down on you, and you're hungry and you're tired, and um, things add up, and eventually, there was going to be conflicts, but thankfully, these guys are all experienced and just absolutely such wonderful people that after after we had our little conflicts and stuff, it would come together and everybody kind of make up and apologize, and we were even closer afterwards. So it really worked out well. You know, and I read all that I could about these long distance trips. I I read everything I could about the Mississippi, and then I started reading about like the Appalachian Trail and things like that. And a lot of times when groups start out together, they don't all end together.
Very
And
true.
the three of us stuck together the whole time and even picked up another really fantastic team member along the way. And, you know, like I said, we finished even stronger than what we started out like. So
Yeah,
that's, to me, that's the proudest thing I could say about the whole experience is that, you know, we all still get along. We started out friendly and we ended up really close friends.
that's great.
So,
Um, Doing the river twice, do you have a favorite section of the
yeah.
mighty Mississippi?
Yeah, people ask me that, and I've kind of touched on it already. I'm weird. I like the headwaters. It's so beautiful. It's
It
so wild
is.
and
I
pristine.
agree.
I saw uh, river otters I had never seen in the wild before. I'd seen some mink and things like that up in Wisconsin, but the river otters, and of course, there's bald eagles everywhere up there now. We even have a few here in Illinois, but I mean, they were just like you'd see half a dozen almost every day. Just all the wildlife, the deer and sandhill crane. I'd never been up close to a sandhill crane before. I got really close to a couple of them, and yeah, I saw ducks and things. I have no clue uh, what their names were, what type of ducks they were. But they were beautiful, things I'd never seen before, and you'd see it all the time.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's funny too thinking about it. I always love showing people in some of the presentations I do. I have the photo of day one after Itasca, and I happen to do it on a lower water year, and going through those wild rice swamps, I guess. Um, where the Mississippi River is like the width of, it's like 3 feet across. You could barely fit your canoe or kayak through it at times. And but it's so beautiful and pristine wilderness. But it's so funny to think about the mighty Mississippi is just, essentially a little creek in your Illinois backyard creeks.
yeah,
I had
it's up close and personal.
Yeah, it really is. I had a black bear swim across the river on my trip that I
Oh,
saw, which
wow.
was just awesome. It was like
Yeah.
we were coming around a bend, and I was paddling I met up with a guy and his son who just happened to be on the river, who lived in the area, who were doing an overnight trip, and I paddled with them, and we were coming around a bend, and it was near one of the campsites, which I think was called either Sleeping Bear, or Bear was in the name of the campsite in Minnesota there. And sure enough, we come around the corner and see a big black blob on the side, and it jumps right into the water and swims right across the Mississippi to the other bank and up and off into the woods.
I bet you won't forget about that one, huh?
No, no,
That's quite
absolutely
the
not.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the headwaters are beautiful. Yeah. eh,
I love the whole river. I love the way it changes. You know, every section was different. Almost every day there was something different. I hear people say that the river's boring. I never felt that way.
no
Yeah,
way.
I mean, I read everything I can, and I all the blogs and all the stuff on Facebook and that comes up every once in a while. And you know that's how they feel about it. That's fine. That's their feeling, but not me. You know, if ever if it was 2,000 miles of just like the headwaters, yeah, that would after a while that would get boring. But it wasn't. You know, every day there's something different, and I was always, it's like what's around the next bend in the river. You know, what am
Yep.
I going to see next? What will be there? What will you experience? Will you meet somebody or some wildlife or who knows what? And yeah, there were some things that were pretty unusual. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see a bear like you did. That would have been great.
It's funny too, isn't it? I don't know what your perception of the Mississippi was before you started kind of being dialed in. I guess you heard the presentation in the '80s, so you've had a little bit of it. But the common, you know, perception of the Mississippi when I talk to people, even paddlers who haven't been on it, it's just like, big old ditch. Why would you want to go out there? It's polluted. There's barges. You're gonna die. It's dangerous. And yet it's just so funny. It's like that's one of my favorite places in the world. It's so wild and it's so raw.
Yeah. Well, I think probably, I don't even remember, to tell you the truth, what my perception used to be, but it was probably something like that, quite honestly. But then after hearing Byron Curtis give his presentation, I was just, kind of enamored with the whole idea. And he really told a great story, and his book really, reinforced that. And then I think luckily I ran across, some other people had good stories about it over the years, and then of course Dale Sanders, and that really got me fired up. Reading about Dale setting the record, and so I don't. It's been such a long time. I don't even remember way back then when I
Well,
thought it
that's
was just
good.
a
That's
dirty
great.
ditch and all polluted. Yeah, but you
Yeah.
do hear that.
I certainly had that perception growing up in Illinois. We'd go up to Wisconsin and go to the lakes, and they were clean and nice. But to think about doing a trip to the Mississippi for what? And yeah, after I paddled it, it's just like, it's an amazing stretch of wilderness that's just waiting to be explored for anyone who has a boat.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's very underutilized in a lot of sections.
Couple things I want to touch on, but you're planning a 2024 trip on one of the other major riverways. You've done two Mississippi River trips, and now what you got up your sleeves for 2024?
Gonna do the Missouri.
The mighty Missouri.
Yep, Mighty Mo from Three Forks, Montana, all the way to St. Louis.
And what's your plan there? You were going with a couple other guys you mentioned.
Yeah, um, Matt Taylor from Tennessee. He's a veteran. He started a day or two after Dale's group in 2022, and eventually caught up with us and got to visit with him and his group. And then when they started to sort of split up and go their own ways, why we recruited Matt to come and join our team, and then he finished with us. And he's just the nicest guy in the world. I think Matt's in his mid 40s, and yeah, he's a very strong paddler, very strong, well-rounded outdoorsman, and a veteran. So he's got a lot of fantastic background and great experience. And then a guy from Minnesota who's about my age, Joe Speldrich. And Joe, I think he started his trip in 2021, but because of the low water, he couldn't do the whole river, every single section. So in 2022, he was out paddling some of those sections that he had to skip over, and uh, he met up with Dale and us at Coon Rapids, actually at the dam, and then he paddled through Minneapolis and on down through St. Paul with us for a day or two. And then he went back home or did a different section that he wanted to catch up on. And then when we were in the lower river, Joe put back on the river, I think around St. Louis, and paddled his arms off until he caught us down in Venice and finished with us.
Oh
So
wow.
he was one of the guys that finished with Dale on that last day. And so last year, Matt said he's going to paddle in Missouri this year. And I said, hey, can I go with you? And then Joe heard about it and said, "Hey, I want to go with you guys too." So there's three of us. And I
Amazing.
think it's going to be a really good group. They're just two of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet.
And how long do you anticipate this trip would take?
Well, we don't know for sure, but we are planning on or allowing in our schedules for 3 months. And we think we can probably do it in 3 months, but if it takes longer, no big deal. At least not for Joe and I, because we're both retired. I'm not sure exactly what Matt's got going on, but I think he can get whatever time he needs. So we're going to definitely try to just be a little bit laid back and really enjoy this trip.
That's amazing. And so, from my understanding, the Missouri River you got as compared to the Mississippi, and fill me in where I'm right or wrong, or fill in the gaps, is, I mean, similar in length, similar in width, and uh, maybe it's more remote. But the bigger challenge is that you have lots of those dams. And lots of huge, massive reservoirs in the Dakotas and all over that you lose your current and the wind out there. I lived in South Dakota for 3 or 4 years, and the wind out there, man, you think it's windy in Pontiac and DeKalb, Illinois. It is a different game out there.
All right. Well, I haven't spent a lot of time out there. I've never been to Montana. I don't think of the three of us, I don't think any of us have ever even been into Montana before. So,
Funny.
yeah, it's going to be a learning process, I'm sure, in a lot of ways. One of the first things when you go on the Missouri River Paddlers website, it says this isn't the Mississippi. So that is it okay? Uh, we're probably going to kind of be in for it here, but we're all game, and we do understand the reservoirs are massive. I think I added it up, and it's I know it's over 800 miles of reservoirs and lakes.
Hmm.
It's just about a third of the entire trip, so that's a big difference from the Mississippi. And then, like you're saying, there's probably going to be even more wind than on the Mississippi. That's what I'm hearing from everybody, so I'm sure that's true.
And more
And I,
rural.
yeah, more remote for sure, way out in the
Yeah.
middle of nowhere for hundreds of miles at a time. Um, so it'll be interesting. Should be fun. Some of the scenery I've seen pictures. It's spectacular.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. So I lived in South Dakota and did many trips on the Missouri, near Yankton, South Dakota, and different sections. The Fort Randall Dam, I believe. I can't remember if that was our put in or take out. And then I lived in Montana as well, in Bozeman, Montana, for a few years, and paddled the headwaters where you will start many a time. The Jefferson and the Madison and the Gallatin, and then the forming of the Missouri too. And funny enough, when I was in Montana, I had paddled. I had already paddled the Mississippi and the Yukon previously, and so I was pretty dialed into the through paddling scene. And there was a guy who was lived outside of Bozeman, and they did a dugout canoe. I don't know if you've heard of him,
yeah,
but they had a dugout canoe that they made a massive log, cleared it out, and paddled the Mississippi River or the Missouri River. Amazing. And so I was following along, and they had uh, you know, a send off, I guess. Like anybody could come and paddle with them on their first day as they started. And so I had got a couple buddies, and we went out and paddled with them on their first day, and it was a blast and a lot of fun, and fun following their journey. But it was interesting, like you said, a lot of the guys, this group in particular, and they were doing it in a unique way. They were, the guy who kind of spearheaded. I should get him on the podcast. Real interesting guy, but he's big into edible plants and you know, I don't know what the right term is. I guess hunter gatherer type of living off of land, and he's
foraging.
doing and he's doing it in a dugout canoe. But so they all convene on the first day, and none of them know each other at all, and I could already tell when I stepped in. I was like, this is gonna be interesting to follow, just because there were some different personalities, and they finished and it was great, but I think they dropped and picked up a couple along the way, but as to be expected. But it's pretty part of the country up there, I guess. All that to say.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're getting more and more excited as every day passes.
Couple more things, then I'll wind her down here. But how about the difference between the? I saw on your website doing a browse, and you do a great blog. It's let's see if I have it here. danofaust.wordpress.com. Um, the difference between the Appalachia and the main channel of the Mississippi. So there's two routes, two options to finish on the Mississippi. Going through New Orleans along the main channel and out through the South Pass generally to Venice, and south of that into the Gulf. And then there's an offshoot that some people take as well, most people I think, called the Appalachia, and it kicks you off of the north of New Orleans. I'm not sure where it is, north of Baton Rouge, maybe, and kicks you off onto a smaller channel. They say the original, or what would the Mississippi River would flow to that channel naturally if it wasn't
Yes.
managed so well. So that's kind of a this or that in the Mississippi River
Yeah.
community. What's your perception on both of those routes?
Well, yeah, I got to do both of them. My first year by myself, I took the Atchafalaya because that's the way Byron Curtis did it. And, he was my inspiration originally. And, I think I thought about changing that. I didn't have to do exactly what Byron did. I wasn't trying to duplicate his trip. But for me, the big advantage on the Atchafalaya was that my family could drive right up to a boat ramp. I'd paddle right up to the ramp, pull my boat out, load it on the car, and we drive back home. So it was very, very convenient. When you follow the Mississippi Channel all the way down through Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Venice, and then out to the Gulf, you get out there in the middle of nowhere, and unless you've rented a boat and you got somebody coming out there to be with you, you get out there and you're all by yourself. And then you either have to paddle back about 20 miles upstream, or you have to hire a boat to haul you back. So I'd already kind of planned to do the Atchafalaya before I really knew what was involved. And it just worked out so good. By the time we got really into the planning, we stuck with that because my family wanted to come down and be a part of it. And they did. They chartered a boat for the last day, and they were out there on the water to see me finish the trip and finish up. So that was pretty exciting.
That's
So that
awesome.
worked out really, really well. I will admit, though, when I got there to, I think it's called Shreve's Bar, is an island right next to the old lock where you cross over onto the Atchafalaya. Um, and I camped there the night before, and I had some second thoughts. It's like, wow, I'm leaving the Mississippi after all this time on this river. I'm not gonna see the rest of it. I'm not gonna finish it. In the Atchafalaya, I'd read all the descriptions and everything, and it's pretty much what they say. It's much smaller, less barge traffic. There is some barge traffic, a lot more wildlife. You're back to a more natural waterway, less wing dams and things. On the Mississippi down south, it's so huge, and the wing dams are so big and reach out so far that you're paddling out there in the middle of a big, big, wide river. And so you're not anywhere near shore. You don't see the animals, and you don't even see many birds or anything. You're just out there in the middle of this big, big river. Then when you go over to the Atchafalaya, I mean, I wasn't even on the Atchafalaya yet. I was on the channel leading out to the Atchafalaya, which is a mile or so. and I saw my first alligator. That's where I saw my first alligator. Because, down there, they might have been on the Mississippi. They might have had alligators down there. They probably did. But I was out in the middle of the river, out in the middle of the channel all the time. I didn't see any of them. I didn't encounter that. So, um, Atchafalaya still had a good flow, a good current, helped me ride along. It was pretty easy paddling. It's very pretty. You're in a freshwater swamp, one of the biggest freshwater swamps in the world, biggest one in the United States, I believe. And it was good, and it was very convenient. Cut like, I don't know, 150 miles or so, 175 miles off the trip. So it's a nice way if that's what you want to do. It's kind of like eventually the last little part you go through Hog Bayou. At least that's the way I went to get out to Burns Point State Park where I finished, and it was it's a different environment, alligators and stuff, but a small, intimate stream, very twisty, turny, very lush. It reminded me of the opposite of the headwaters. I started out in a little stream like that with a really, abundant wildlife, and it's right there. And that's how it finished too. So it was kind of a nice way to finish, almost like you started.
Right.
Um, the second year going down through staying on the main Mississippi River channel, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and on down. I'd heard all this talk about how dangerous it would be, these big ocean going ships, many, many more barges parked along the riverbanks for miles and miles at a time. And all that was true, but it wasn't nearly as intimidating or as dangerous as I had anticipated. The river is really big down there, and we had lots of room to move around. We could avoid all the barges and the big ships. It's very industrial. There were miles and miles and miles where you couldn't get to shore because it was just lined with these parked barges, um, fleeted barges, I guess is what they say. Um, Actually, St. Louis was a more intimidating to me going
I
through
agree.
St. Louis than going through either Baton Rouge or New Orleans.
I found both of them to be a little pucker factor going.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, there's no way I could possibly describe so that someone could understand just how big those ships are, those cargo ships, and uh, you talk about feeling really, really small. Yeah, and I didn't get anywhere near any of those ships, and I still felt tiny, like an ant out there. Uh, they are huge, and they throw up. Some of them can throw up a pretty good wake. Luckily, there weren't any breaking waves or anything. Mostly big rollers. Those can kind of be fun and intimidating both. But yeah, I mean, I had an advantage too. I was with Dale and Matt. Those guys are really, really good outdoorsmen. Matt Briggs loves that area. Him and his dad go fishing down there. They've done it his whole life. He knows that area really well. So we had good camp spots and everything because they know all the good camping spots down there. Sometimes it can. I could understand it. Uh, the good camping spots are a lot fewer and farther between than on the river north of there. Um, so all the things I read about the main channel going all the way out again through New Orleans and all that, it was all accurate and true, but it just wasn't quite as bad as what I think I had worked it up to be in my head.
Sure.
So
Hmm.
I
Um,
enjoyed I enjoyed both of them. I'm glad I got to do both trips.
yeah, absolutely. I would be too. I hope to do it. I hope to do it again someday as well, for sure. Um, so it's funny. I talk to people from all over the world. Really, I've been doing this now over 3 years, coming up. Over 3 years, and for some reason, I always seem to you don't think there's anyone around, and then all of a sudden I get all these Midwest people. I talked to a lot of people from Illinois. Just the guy I had on the other day was one of the episodes that you had mentioned that you listened to was from Illinois, and it's funny how you're as far as the world goes, you're right down the road from me.
Yep.
Um, and but anyway, I really also enjoy doing all of the little creeks and all of the rivers in Illinois and southern Wisconsin. And the river that you're on there near Pontiac, Illinois, the Vermilion is beautiful. I've had one of my best fishing days from the canoe for out of a while on the Vermilion, just hammering smallmouth. And the rapids are fun and lots of great fish. But there's a canoe in my fleet right now, and I hope I'm not outing myself to you. Um, that I found on the Vermilion River, uh, near I forget the put in and takeout that we were at. I think it's near Streeter, Illinois, maybe.
Okay.
And I was paddling with my buddy, and we're rounding the corner, and my buddy who I'm fishing with is like he's great and he's the best, and but he is always dialed in river. He's a fishing guide and a river bum. And river rat like me, and he's always dialed into river booty, so like things that
Mhm.
wash up on the shore. So he's always finding fishing lures, fishing tackle, you name it. Most of the stuff he tries to bring in the boat, and I'm like, come on, really? I mean, I pick it up because it's trash, but you don't want to bring that home, do you? And he's like, oh yeah, yeah. Um,
Sounds like
but
my kind of guy.
yeah, exactly. He finds everything. It's crazy. And so we're rounding the corner, and there's a massive log jam, like massive, massive. I don't know how big it was, but it was tall log jam on one of the bridges on the Vermilion. And we come along, and he's like, I think that's a canoe up there, this little spot of green hanging out in the log jam. And I'm like, huh, I think you're right. And we've seen multiple, boats torn apart on all of our river travels. So I didn't think much of it. But
So you got my canoe?
is it yours?
No,
Okay, good. I was kind of hoping it was.
I've
Uh,
never had a green canoe, but
It's funny, but yeah, we climbed up on this log jam and like unburied it on the Vermilion, and were able to haul it down, and then we tied it to the back, and it was in great condition and still in my fleet that I run with right now.
sweet. Yeah, that's the best.
Hard to beat
I
free,
did.
right?
I did lose a kayak one time. I was out
Well,
paddling in a flood, and I shouldn't have been out there, and I lost it. And there's a red dagger response. So if you ever find that one, let me know.
yeah,
Okay.
I'll let you know. I
That was a
also
long time
actually
ago. I think it's gone by now.
I was living in I went to college in Colorado, and I was living in Colorado, and I was paddling with a buddy in Colorado outside of Boulder on the St. Vrain River, and we flipped, and I think this is the only time that I've wrapped a canoe, and we wrapped it on a strainer that was out in the kind of in the middle of the river. We had like a maybe like a 5 foot gap in order to hit. And we started too low in the water to get our eddy turn in line and ate it. And we ended up hiking out and having to hitchhike back into town. Couldn't get it out. We were trying. And uh, just for two reasons. One, because I'm always cruising Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist for canoes because I'm always looking for a good canoe deal, and two, just because I was kind of always interested, but I was searching. This I think was like 2 or 3 years later, maybe even more, because I had moved and I was in South Dakota at the time, and I was looking, and I found an ad on Craigslist for canoe wrapped in the St. Vrain River, and I was like, I'll be damned. And I had a buddy who was still living in Boulder at the time. I called him and I was like, hey man, go check this canoe out, see if it's salvageable, if it's worth saving. And he went, looked at it, called me, and he was like, dude, not worth it. The lady wants to repair it. You should just give it to her. I was like, perfect. But I was glad to hear the story.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Funny, funny. Um, Dan, what is we'll wind her down here. What has been your takeaways from your long distance canoe trips on the mighty Mississippi and other rivers, and your canoeing and kayaking and camping throughout your life? What's been your takeaway? I guess that's a big question, but maybe just with the big trips.
Yeah, one of the things I like um, about just being on a camping trip, or you get out there on the river in the middle of nowhere, you can really, kind of get away from everything. First of all, um, I don't want to get too religious or anything, but that's for me personally. I'm kind of a spiritual person, not a real big religious person, and I feel closer to God when I'm in the outdoors. But besides that, I think you can kind of reset. You get out on in the middle of nowhere, and food and shelter, and the basic necessities of life. Those are the things you concentrate on, and it you figure out what's important. It's not, to me, it's not, what's the baseball team doing, or what's going on social media, or whatever it happens to be. All the distractions we have in life, those things aren't important. Um, and really, at the bottom line, what it comes down to is the people in your life, the people you care about, your family. And it seems to me, that's the thing that always sort of, being outdoors and being on a trip like that, that's what it brings out, is how important the people are in your life, and the people you meet along the way, and the relationships you have, and the friends you make. And so that's the most rewarding thing. And then beyond that, it's just, I enjoy it. It makes me happy. Uh, Helps me de-stress. That was one of the big reasons I paddled when I was younger. I needed to just have a an escape from all the regular stresses of work and daily life and things like that. So it's a great way to do that. And come to find out, it's healthy. There's a lot of health benefits. It does de-stress you, just going for a walk for 20 minutes in the outdoors, um, sitting next to a stream, listening to the sounds of nature, all kinds of things.
It's the
And it's
best.
been documented, and people have made me aware of that now. So it's not just, that's what I think. This people, really smart people, have said, yeah, it's a real thing. So yeah, I think it's great, and I encourage other people to do it. They take anything away from some of my trips and hearing about it and listening to me talk about it. I hope that would be their takeaway. That just it'll benefit you just to spend a little time outdoors. You definitely don't have to go on a 2,000-mile canoe or kayak trip. You just 20 minutes, a half an hour, whatever you can spare, whatever you can get out of your week. Just go out and de-stress a little bit and enjoy nature.
Amen. I think that was perfectly said. Dan, the movie is called Greybeard, Myth, the Man, the Mississippi, right?
Yeah, Greybeard, the man, the myth, the Mississippi.
And your website, your blog, where people can find read about your past Mississippi trips. Are you going to do some stuff for the Missouri trip this summer, upcoming summer in 2024 on there?
Yep, I'm going to continue to blog. I really enjoyed that. I wish I had done it earlier in my life. Um, I go back and I read back through that stuff all the time. Just the last day or so, somebody was asking about the Illinois River, and I did a little trip on the Illinois River, getting ready for the Mississippi. It was about 3 or 4 days, and I went back and I reread that, and uh, it's a lot of fun for me. It's very enjoyable. It's almost like I'm back out on the river again. There's so many little details, and of course, the photographs and everything are great. But to put down your thoughts and your feelings and what was going on and what your experiences were, um, it's just another beneficial thing you can do on a trip like that. I don't keep a diary. I don't keep a log or anything in my daily life, but doing it on these trips. Uh, it's therapeutic, if nothing else, and a lot of benefits. Just like there is to being in the outdoors, there's a lot of extra benefits that you don't even realize. So I'm definitely going to do it this summer.
Great.
Uh, yeah.
Well, I'll be following along, and best of luck. And yeah, we'll have to stay in touch. And looking forward to following along the Missouri River adventure.
Thanks, Will. I really appreciate it.
You bet.